at the end of the talk. I'm so sorry to cut in, but so once again, we welcome Karla to fill that A section. I can attest she's been back and forth to DC and flying all over. So God bless her strength and wisdom. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kate.
We totally welcome you.
I was going to leave this past weekend. I preached a retreat to the young women.
Wow, the place.
So, oh, the microphone. Yeah, thank you. Yes. Sorry about that. Hello.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, because I don't have a very loud voice. So this weekend I came to Philly to preach a retreat to the young women, and it was a very beautiful experience. It was a retreat on Mary Magdalene.
Oh.
So I did with them part of the meditation that we saw in the last session of the woman caught in adultery, that we just take for granted that it's Mary Magdalene. We don't know for sure, but anyway, so it just reminded me of you, of all of you, and thank you for coming. I know that as the year reaches the end, we get a little bit busier, right? And like Advent and Christmas and decorations, and it's just like crazy. So I appreciate that you are here with us. And today we're gonna dive into the gaze of God, right? This is a beautiful topic as well. So hopefully this will also help us. Oh, wait a second. Okay, there we are. Yeah, so we are in our third session. Time flies, right? I feel that we are just starting, and this will be more than halfway through, but hopefully we will take the best out of it. So the title that I thought for this was Reclaimed and Redeemed, and the idea is that we reach this grace of restoring our true identity through the healing power of God's gaze. It's not that we have to reach this grace, but rather that we have to ask God to give us that grace of restoring my true identity through His loving gaze, right? And just before going to the next slide, I just want to refresh. Is there someone here that didn't come or didn't hear the recording of the last formation talk? There's two people. Okay, so just like a brief summary, we did a beautiful reflection on the sinful woman that was caught in adultery, and we were talking about the difference between being caught and being discovered, right? I hope you all remember. Maybe one of you can give you the summary, but it's like the beautiful and like healing difference of when you feel caught by someone and when you feel discovered, right? Like it's just like 180 degrees of difference. One person, and the main difference relies on what is being seen of you and how it is being seen. Do you remember that slide? So when what they are seeing of me is something that I don't feel proud of, and when that gaze shows me that I shouldn't be proud of, then I feel caught, okay? But what happens when I feel discovered, it is because maybe what is being seen about me is like that noble and tender part of my heart that it's not that I'm proud of it, but I know my real me, and I know that I didn't mean to be mean, you know, or I didn't mean to be rude, and this person gets it. So what that person is seeing is that noble part of my heart, and the way that person is looking at me, he's actually telling me, I get it. I understand you, and I don't judge you. And that is what makes the big difference between being caught and being discovered, right? So now we will dive a little bit deeper into that loving gaze. Just as the Pharisees caught this woman, right? She was in the very act of sinfulness. That's the literal words of the gospel. They caught her in the very act, like there, all naked and all like doing all these things. But at the same time, we see that Jesus was praying in the Mount of Olives. While they were catching her, he was discovering her in her prayer, in his prayer, because he was seeing her with all her sinfulness, but also with all her brokenness, and with all her longings to be found, you know, and to be understood and to be healed in all that mess that she held inside. So with this little summary, then I will retake this session of today. And our, obviously, like, this is what we want, right? And if we think of this woman, once she was discovered by Jesus, and once he defended her with that courage and with that, like, I don't know, Jesus was so amazing in that moment. I just fall in love more and more every time I read this passage, because I'm like, he is so awesome, and he's my husband. Sorry, ladies. In the retreat, I know Steph's future daughter-in-law was there. So then as I was preaching and I was telling her, Emily, yes, you got a great husband, a future husband, but sorry, he's not as cool as my husband. As cool as Jack Ziegler is, like, it's no one like my husband, right? But then, like, I just read that passage and I'm just fascinated, because Jesus was so awesome. Like, he found a way to defend this woman and to heal her and to restore her and to transform her into this woman, right? I put this quote, even though she's not a Catholic, but doesn't matter, like, she's transmitting. I'm sorry that I feel I'm on your way, but maybe it's easier that you just, yeah? Okay, sorry. So she just says, we need women who are so strong, they can be gentle. Look at this, like, it's like a paradox, right? That you are so strong and so rooted in your identity that I don't need to fight. I don't need to be aggressive, because I rely on the truth that falls by its own weight. I don't need to be aggressive and to convince anyone that you need to love me or you need to respect me. No, I am loved, and I know the value that I hold in my person, because God has my back, right? And because of that certainty, I can have the interior strength not to fall in that game of violence and, like, just fighting back and forth. Like, no, I don't fall in those games, because I know who I am, right? And this is not arrogance. It's actually, like, the true balance of identity and humility and strength, right? And then we need women that are so educated that they can be humble. Because sometimes we think, oh yeah, the more education I receive, the more aloof I become, right? And the more arrogant, and, like, I look at you like I'm doing a favor to be with you, right? But actually no, like, the more we are educated, the more we should realize, like, I don't know anything, right? I'm no one. And Jesus's gaze actually educates my heart in that humility. And when I allow him to contemplate me and to heal me with his loving gaze, then all of a sudden I start learning all these things about what it means to have a human dignity, you know? And I can go and interact with the poorest of the poor and with very ignorant people, and I can learn from them. I have the humility to, like, there's something that happens when we allow Jesus to penetrate my heart with his loving gaze, that all of a sudden everything becomes so beautiful, right? And everything is an opportunity for me to learn. So then, even if I'm with the most humble of the humble people and with the most unlearned, I learn from them, because my heart now is open, right? Now I am no longer afraid of showing who I am, and that is why I am open and I learn more. I'm receptive to receive all the good that God wants to give to me in this very present moment. Whether I am with these politicians or if I am in Kensington serving the poor and the smelly people, right, in the streets. And we need women that are, we need women who are so fierce they can be compassionate, right? Like, that we can just go into that adventure of embracing. I love how Pope Francis talks a lot about the revolution of tenderness. I don't know if you have heard that. It's like, don't be afraid of embracing and having the courage to live out tenderness. That's like a paradox, right? Like, you need courage to live that tenderness and to experience it and to receive it from other people, but also to give it to other people. You need to be, like, so not afraid to live this revolution of compassion and tenderness. And then we need women that are so passionate that they can also be rational, right? And usually we see passion as something that blocks our capacity to think. But actually the passion, like God gave us passion not to block our rationality, but rather to give to it this interior strength, because then there is these other quotes that I was going to include it and I totally forgot, I'm sorry, but Cardinal Carvalho, I don't know if you know who he is, he's the prefect for the congregation of consecrated life, right? So he wrote a letter recently to all of us consecrated women, and he wrote this beautiful quote that I hope I'll remember it by heart, but he says, beautiful is the witness who transmit, like beautiful has to be the witness, and not only courageous, the witness that talks about Jesus because Jesus is beautiful, right? Because we see that the face of that who we preach about is beautiful. So just the fact that we do have good reasons to believe in our faith, right? Like the catechism is very rational actually, and that is something that I love about our faith, that it goes along with the human dignity. Like it's not that it's good because the Catholic Church says so. No, the Catholic Church says so because it is actually good, because this makes sense. And because it makes sense, the Catholic Church actually promotes it, right? Like killing is evil. That's like common sense. I don't want to be killed, and I don't want to kill, right? And I mean, there's other things where it's not that easy, but we see like the Catholic Church encourages us to use the brain, to actually think, and like to foster that critical thought and like rationality, right? Like that's why God gave us that gift. But then because I am so actually grounded on that like common sense that comes from the experience of how Jesus in his humanity, he's so coherent. Like he is one person that is, what he thinks matches perfectly with what he says, and what he says matches perfectly with what he feels and what he does. So when there's that perfect alignment, then you become more passionate in life, because everything makes sense, and it's like a driving force that impels you to go and evangelize with that confidence of, this makes total sense. I mean, when I love in Christmas that we're gonna start with the decorations, right? And I love when the churches, they show, maybe there's a nativity, and then you see the tabernacle, and then you see the crucifix. Three mysteries that are there aligned, and that they talk about the same Jesus that doesn't change, right? It's the same Jesus that is humble, that is rejected, that is abandoned, that is presented to us as someone very vulnerable, right? And when we receive him in the Eucharist, many times, I don't know if it has happened to you, but I remember one time I was in Canada at the Oratory of St. Joseph, and we went to Mass, and the priest was giving out communion, but instead of people making a line like this, they would kneel all along the, how do you call that part?
Altar rail.
The altar rail, So the priest would go like this, giving out the communion, right? But then I saw this one guy that he received communion in the hand, and instead of consuming the Eucharist, he put Jesus in his pocket. And I saw it, and I was like, I need to do something about it. So I went with this guy. I don't speak French. I think, speak to God, I was with this other consecrated that she didn't know French. So I was like, please tell him, like, he has the Eucharist in his pocket. So I was like, no, guy, like, I was trying to. And he ran away. I had to chase him. And I yelled at the guy, there's these, like, not police officers, but people that take care. And I told him, stop him, he has the Eucharist. So then, thanks be to God, they stopped him. And he was so upset because they forced him to pull out the Eucharist. And he just pulled it out and just, like, threw it to the floor. And he started spitting and like saying all these horrible curses. I was like, praise God, right? So we just knelt, and the other consecrated grabbed the Eucharist and she consumed it. We were crying, we were shaking. Of course, that's like horrible, right? And then coming back to this experience of Jesus becoming so vulnerable, that for me was very strong, because I was like, I mean, why is there people that is afraid of God? he is the one that should be afraid of us. Because who knows what that guy was going to do with the Eucharist. They bring them to these satanic masses where they do all these horrendous things to the Blessed Sacrament. And he, God, the triune God, the omnipotent God, should be afraid of us. And you see that message is so clear and so coherent throughout all his life. You see it in Bethlehem, he had to flee away. You see it in the Eucharist with all these sacrileges that we see. We see it in the cross where he was spitted and like mocked and like laughed at. Right? It's the same God that everything makes perfect sense. And because it makes perfect sense, then I become more passionate to defend him and to embrace him. You see? And because with his loving gaze, he's telling me always one message: you are lovable. His gaze doesn't change with my mood. My mood does change, right? One day I become this beautiful wife and I'm so heroic and so virtuous, and next day I'm like, get out of my way, you, right? But we are the ones that change, but Jesus does not change his gaze. So when you think, how does he look at me in those moments when I am this horrible woman? Well, it's actually the same exact gaze that he wants to offer you when you feel that you are this holy woman of God. Because he doesn't change. His love is unchanging. And that makes us passionate, right? Like we can just settle there. Like it's like this is a safe place for me to settle in and build my identity and just like flourish here. This is like my safe haven. His gaze, his loving gaze. And then we need women that are so disciplined that they can be free. And this is so beautiful, right? Because when we start experiencing the loving gaze of Jesus, he is also like compelling us, and he's also challenging us to a new way of life that actually requires discipline, right? If you, for example, see people that suffer with addictions, and all of a sudden in a spiritual retreat, not only psychological but spiritual, they receive a lot of healing. All of a sudden they feel, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's beautiful, Jesus is love, but I know that for me to make this grace sustainable and for me to embrace it, I do need discipline, right? So they start making maybe like these like schedules that help them overcome the challenges of an addiction, and they start with a routine, and they are very demanding, and they need an accountable partner, and they need to go to their meetings and all these things. But at the same time, they see that they are also growing in freedom, right? It seems like their life is becoming more rigid, but it's a rigidness that it's just a means to live out that freedom, right? So all this is what Jesus wants to give to us, and this is like, remember this title, Reclaimed and Redeemed, restoring our true identity. When we are able to restore our identity in our relationship with God, these are the fruits. Then I become that woman that is strong, that is educated, that is fearful, passionate, and disciplined. And I can be all these things, right? Now here, okay, how can I do that? Or like, what is the path, right? And maybe some of you have been experiencing like how, if the gaze of God has all that power over my soul, okay, I want that gaze, right? It's like, okay, Jesus, look at me, right? And then we go to the chapel, okay, Jesus, I'm here, can you please look at me? Okay, I don't feel anything. Jesus, are you there? Right? And sometimes we get these like, how do I do it? So, of course, this is not about us doing anything. And here's again where we just enter into the mystery of understanding what prayer is. That prayer is not something that I do. I don't go to pray to accomplish my goals and, okay, in this prayer I will become stronger. Well, no. How do you know? Right? That's up to God. God is the one that will make you strong whenever he wants and through the means that he wants, right? So when we go to prayer, we have to arrive with that total abandonment, that we are in the presence of a loving God, that he wants this. This is something that we cannot deny, like he wants to give me this grace. So I just come to prayer with that total certainty. And he loves when he sees that we actually have that certainty. And that's all he needs for him to restore and to give you all these gifts, right? Now, I don't know if I have recommended you before this book that is called The Impact of God of Ian Matthew. I didn't write it here. Maybe whenever they send you the emails, Steph, are you the one that sends the emails of like all the questionnaires? Oh, Katie? So maybe you can just send them also that, Katie. I can send you the link if you want, but it's in Amazon. It's The Impact of God. Ian Matthew. I-A-N, and the last name is Matthew. And he develops these ideas that are here in this slide, right? Like the 5 effects of the gaze upon us. So it is like this book transformed my spiritual life. I can just tell you, like, I brought it to a spiritual retreat that I did by myself in a monastery in the Catskills. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like, it took me, like, I could just pray about it for a whole year, and it's just very, very beautiful, very deep. And this is just one part of the book, but he says how God's gaze actually beautifies, enlightens, purifies, strengthens, and enriches. And this is something very beautiful to think, because when you, so raise your hand if you feel that you have experienced at some point of your life the loving and beautiful gaze of God. Okay, so I see many of you, not everyone, but many of you. So if you haven't, just go and talk to the other ones and ask them about their and maybe that way you will convince Jesus of giving you that grace, right? But here it's so beautiful, because actually when you expose yourself, I don't know if I shared this with you, but I think it was in 2015. I went into a renewal course, right? It was like 2 months of like an intense course that they offer to consecrated women every once in a while, and I was invited to that one. And I remember I was in this time of my life when I was like recovering from all these struggles that I have shared with you after all the crisis of the founder and stuff. And I remember that, I mean, I was happy, but it's not that I was in this mystical stage of my life, like, no. I was still like very, I don't know, I felt that I was like very active and doing so many things and just like even distracted in my prayer, you know. But this one day I arrived to this mass during the renewal course. I was in charge of the laundry, so I would do the laundry for 30 women, right? And it was like about to start mass, so I was just putting things in the dryer, and I literally ran to mass. So I arrived with this like heart rate and right, and so it's not something that I planned. It's not something that I provoked, or that I had been 2 hours in prayer, and of course then you would expect that you would have this mystical experience. No, like I was in this mood of zero spiritual you know, like mentality, or like, yeah, I was just like so agitated. But all of a sudden I arrived to that one mass when God wanted me to have this beautiful experience. As soon as we started mass, it's as if I felt from all around me this amazing, mind-blowing, loving gaze of God. Just like, imagine his eyes just fixed in you, in my poor little tiny soul, right? And then when we arrived to the I confess, I started to cry, because I was like, I am so unworthy, right? And it makes me cry, because it was this like experience of, God, why do you love me? Like, look at me, look at my soul. Like, I'm so miserable, so, look, like I'm agitated. I was in the laundry. I didn't take any minute to come and prepare my soul, and you're just pouring all your love to me. Like, how can you be so good, right? And anyway, I was just like, okay, Karla, relax. You cannot be like sobbing here. What are the others gonna think? And then I calmed down a little bit, but then as the time came to make the line for communion, I just felt this like strong experience of Jesus telling me, it pleases me so much when you trust in me. Just abandon yourself in my arms. I want you to be my spouse, and I want you to trust and abandon yourself in my loving arms. I have your back. And as I was just getting closer and closer to receive the Eucharist, and then I received the Eucharist, and it was just something very, very beautiful, right? I actually there's a book that is called Heaven's Song, that is by Christopher West, where he develops this crazy idea of how the human sexual act, like the sexual act between a man and a woman, is the most bold sign and the clear sign or expression of the ecstasy that we will all experience in heaven. Imagine, right? Through the sexual act between a man and a woman, that's only a shadow of what it will be to be united to God. And in that moment, I kind of understood that. I was like, I mean, this is amazing, right? Before getting consecrated, I had a lot of boyfriends and I dated all these guys and I had it's not that I was this angel, no. So I have a lot of experiences and I know what human love is. But in that moment in that Eucharist, I was like, this is real ecstasy. Like, this is real joy in life. And when you get to experience that, all of a sudden you feel that you are purified, that you are beautified, right? And I knew in that moment that it's not that Jesus was looking at me with love because of how beautiful I was, no. I was like, it's the other way around. I am becoming beautiful just because of the way he looks at me, you know? And I'm sure you have experienced this with your husbands. When you arrive and you show up with your beautiful dress, ready to go to a party or something, and he looks at you, and when you see that you are provoking in him this like attraction or these emotions, right? Or this something is stirring in his heart and in his body, that you are actually seducing him in that way, you all of a sudden you feel more beautiful, right? You experience this with your husbands. Because of the way he's looking at you, you feel more beautiful. And you feel like, oh wow, I'm so pretty. And I don't know if I told you this story. It's a very superficial story, but I love to share it. If I shared it already, just tell me, Karla, move on, okay? But it's like many years before getting consecrated, my sister, I have a sister, we're very good friends, and she went out to the nightclub that one night. Have I shared this?
No.
And there was this other girl. No, okay, good. So then she went to the nightclub with her friends, and they were just there, you know, dancing and whatever. And then, of course, teenagers, and they are just, you know, teenagers criticize, right? Sorry, that's at least me and my sister also. So they were there, and all of a sudden they see this woman that enters to the nightclub, but she walks as if she was this like diva, right? And all, like, my sister and her friends start criticizing her. Look at her, like, what she thinks she is. She's not that pretty after all, like, what's her problem? And look at her pants. I mean, what a big deal. Why is she thinking that she's this, like, amazing woman, right? But then they see that she's actually holding hands with this, like, super handsome actor that was so famous in that time in Mexico. So it's like this huge, tall, like, super strong guy, and like the cutest guy ever, right? Everybody in Mexico loved him. So then they're like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. Right? Of course, that makes perfect sense. Like, if I was this ugly woman walking by myself, I would be like, sorry, you know, like you get intimidated, but because you're like, this guy chose me. You all ladies, like, I got this party, no? So then, because you are chosen by this amazing man, that gives you confidence. And that eradicates any complex of inferiority. So if you translate this into the spiritual reality, it's exactly the same. Once you feel that you have been pierced by the gaze of God, there's nothing and there's no one that can ever crush you. There's no circumstances, there's no difficulties, no humiliations, no nothing. Because this guy chose you. And this is the guy, I mean, the guy's guy, you know? And that is how he beautifies us. He gives us that confidence. But we need to experience his loving gaze. And that is why it's such a cornerstone in our faith. If you have never experienced the loving gaze of God, you gotta convince Jesus to give you that gift. Because I wonder, how can you even survive without it? How can we even live our faith without it? And I really admire all those people that live their faith, but in a routinary way, without having this experience, right? So let's just ask Jesus, please come and give me this grace, because I need it to be beautified. And it's not a physical beauty, He beautifies my soul. And He makes me realize that even though I do have my mistakes, and look, it also enlightens. So it's not that we become blind to our mistakes and to our defects. No, actually, the contrary. The more you are exposed to His gaze, the more He actually shows you who you truly are. But He shows you in such a beautiful, tender, and gentle way that you don't feel caught and you don't feel humiliated. You feel actually encouraged and protected. And because He loves you despite of knowing you very well, you feel encouraged to actually work with more resilience, with more, with more passion to become a better person, right? And maybe also, like, you can think of, I don't know, the moments when you have been this horrible woman that you don't feel proud of. Maybe it was also because you felt judged by other people, right? When you feel judged, of course you put a barrier. We need to shield ourselves, and it makes sense. But because Jesus doesn't judge us and we don't feel like that, then with Him we are able to release those shields, to let them fall, and then we are more free to actually be ourselves. So that is how He enlightens me to enable me to see all those areas that I need to change. But it's not that I need to be this virtuous, but He actually purifies me. When you are seen with so much love, it's not so difficult to be a good person, I think I shared with you that one time that I arrived, I had to go to the airport like 3 times. I shared with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That one day, and I came back and I was just like, leave me alone. Don't touch me, So of course all the consecrators were like, what's your problem? Relax, right? But there was this one consecrator that she came to me and she was so compassionate. And she looked into my eyes, understanding my position. She said, Karla, you are so tired. Sorry that we made this to you, right? And then all my defense mechanisms, they just disappeared. I started to cry. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'm such a jerk. Right? And then it was easy for me to become a good person instead of, well, mind your own business, leave me alone, So when you are exposed to this beautiful gaze, it's easier for you. It doesn't take that much of a virtue to become that person that you are actually called to be. And it strengthens you also, and it just enriches you, right? And then, so look, this, I just thought of this image, and if it helps you, you can also use it in your moment of reflection. I know that you have your questionnaire, but if this image can also, sometimes in those moments of reflection, it helps to see what is this image telling me, right? In the context of all these things that we have been reflecting on, how do I feel, right? Maybe sometimes I feel that I have nothing to offer, that my soul is so dry, but then with the gaze of God, maybe He's allowing me to flourish some way, right? He is able to break through the cracks, right? And think of these, like, I don't know, when I see this picture, I'm so like surprised, because this flower, I mean, it's so tender, so tiny, so fragile, right? I could just step on it and like grab it and destroy it very easily because it's so tender, right? But as tender as it is, it had the strength to break through the cracks and make herself come out. So tender, but at the same time, she had that strength. And like goodness in our heart always finds its way, because God wants us to open those cracks. And sometimes you can also make the reflection of how sometimes the cracks are our wounds, right? Or our mistakes, our faults. But those mistakes or those wounds are those cracks that can actually make it easier for us to flourish. So through those difficulties, that sometimes you might think, oh no, right now I cannot pray because I have all these difficulties and all these distractions and all this pain that is not allowing me to pray. What are we actually saying there? these difficulties are not allowing me to enjoy my moment of prayer. But they're not an impediment for you to pray. Because prayer is nothing but just go and sit and allow God to make his job. So the difficulties are not an impediment for God to do that, right? Actually, the contrary. If you bring them to prayer, he can take them and redeem them and transform them into something very beautiful, right? This is the power of the loving gaze of God, that he can show life where there's no signs of life in our soul. When we lose hope on ourselves, he shows us, you're mistaken. You are so lovable, and there's so much good that I want to pull out of your soul, right? And here, just as a reference also, right? What is the big difference between God's voice and Satan's voice? Here we see, right, the big differences, and you can also think about it, and maybe think, and actually I think it's in one of your questionnaires, if there's been times in my life where I have experienced all these symptoms of obsession, worriness, condemnation, discouragement, confusion, that I feel being pushed or forced, frightened, and maybe rushed to make a decision, well, for sure that's not God, right? And I keep telling these, for example, with young women that are discerning their vocation, I always tell them, with God, there is no rush. That's the first principle. When you want to discern something or make a decision based on what God really wants, there's no rush. Take your time. Because God is a God of eternity. And he takes his time. You know, in God's world, there is nothing urgent. Urgency doesn't exist in the spiritual reality, right? Even if, like, I had a conversation with an exorcist at the beginning of this past year, and so I was telling him, okay, Father, I need this prayer, and it's urgent because look, like my soul. He's like, oh no, nothing is urgent. Nothing is urgent. I'm like, Father, and do you apply that to people that are actually possessed? Oh yeah, nothing is urgent. God finds his way, right? I'm like, wow, like an exorcist is telling me this, right? And sometimes we can be pushed like, I need to change this now. No, it's your vanity that is pushing, right? I need to be perfect now. It's our vanity. I want to get rid of this defect now. Well, is it God, or is it maybe you, your vanity, and that you just want to be the perfect one so that everybody admires you, and you know? So we can just evaluate, what is it? Why is it that I'm in such a rush? If God hasn't healed me from this defect, he could instantly. In this moment, he could just like disappear your defects. But if he doesn't make that happen, there's a reason. Allow yourself to be led by Jesus, right? He is the one that leads you. He is the one that decides the times, the ways, the shapes, the forms, the everything. And he has no rush, and he brings comfort and that calm, that stillness into our hearts. So this is just for you to also discern, right, when it's God and when it's not God. And then this is also for your personal questionnaire. Once you go back home, you will get this in your like homework or questionnaire to do this exercise, right? Like 5 steps to free my heart. So it's just this, if you see, for example, that you need to bring forgiveness into your life, or that you need to renounce to some things, this can be one way that you can actually clear the path for the grace of God to enter into your heart. Maybe Jesus hasn't been able to enter, and you haven't been able to experience his gaze because there's things that you need to clean, right? So this is a good exercise. Just find a moment of quiet. If you can do this before the Blessed Sacrament, that can also be very helpful. That you just first do the mental exercise, right? Of who do I still need to forgive? What do I need to forgive myself for, right? What lie do I need to renounce to? A lie that keeps coming, right? Or if there is a spirit of discouragement or of depression in my life, or of anger, or of lies, or whatever, just like write it down, do that mental process of reflection, and then I ask the Father's blessing upon her, this person or that person or myself. And then once you have like your draft and you do that mental reflection, then you bring it to prayer. And you do that hopefully before the Blessed Sacrament, right? So that He can actually help you heal all these wounds that we all have, right? And then, well, this was the content that I wanted to share. Now you have the time for your personal reflections and group discussions. So as always, it's a joy for me to be with you. And enjoy your time. Thank you for welcoming me. And I am so sorry that we will have a big, long period of time until we get to our next, I think our next session is not until March, if I'm not mistaken.
Not until March.
Not until March, right? Yeah, that's that. But it's just that in December, I'm not planning on coming because December is just so short with Christmas. And then in January, we have in DC the March for Life, and I am the one in charge of running everything for all the Regnum Christi groups that come to DC. I am.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because maybe some of us will join you.
Oh, okay, yeah. I can actually forward you, Katie,
Okay.
the email so that you can send it.
Because we could come, right?
Oh, yes, of course, yeah.
All right, then.
So the idea is that you can come as a group, and then you find a group leader. I don't know if it would be you, and that group leader is the one that registers for all the group. You just go to the link that you will see in the email. And so the plan that we are organizing for the whole Regnum Christi family is that on Thursday, the 20th of January, there's going to be a mission, like a street mission in the night, like in the evening. It's from 6 to 9:30 p.m. So the idea is that we meet at a parish. Once we close registrations, we will let you know which parish you will be sent to, but it's going to be some parish in like downtown. So the idea is that we split by groups because we don't all fit in one same church. So right now we have 3 big churches. So anyway, and there you will have like a brief introduction and like a mini training to do the street missions. It's downtown, it's not like in any dangerous place. So it's just there, inviting people to come to the adoration. That's gonna be the mission about. And we will have dinner together. Like dinner, it's pizza. Please don't think you're gonna get caviar or something. It's pizza and Coke or water, something like that. And then next day, we will just join the march. If you want to sign up to the youth rally, I mean, I don't know if you want to go to the youth rally. You're welcome. I think that we are all young, right, in our hearts. But that has to be done through the diocese, through your own diocese. They don't allow me to register you if you're from Philly. So that's why each person or I don't know if they can do it by groups, but you can. There's a link also that can guide you through. And that would be it. And then if you know also young women that might want to go there and do also a vocational discernment retreat, we're gonna also offer that for young women that might be thinking of a consecrated life or religious life as an option. And that would be start Saturday right after the March for Life. Well, actually March for Life is Friday. So the retreat would start like Friday night and it would go all the way till Sunday morning. Okay, just for you to know. So I can send the link and the email to you, Katie.
That'd be great. And we would probably are we responsible for around like housing or like hotel?
Oh yeah,
or
like we're not doing any transportation,
Okay.
neither hosting or
Okay.
venues. Yeah.
We can decide more on that.
Okay.
And
I hope to see you there. Actually, that would be
we'll
good.
keep you in prayer too. It's beautiful what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Yeah.
Thank you.
Say a little prayer for me, please, because so this year I'm just gonna be very brief, but because I arrived 1 year ago to DC, and I arrived supposedly to work only with women in DC. But of course, I'm like, I want to do that, right? And I want to do this, and right now I have so many things on my plate because just things have happened in a very natural way that I've been engaged in so many things that I know I need to let go some things. But don't worry, it's not feeling. I'm not gonna let go feel.
Can we pray over you now?
Yes, of course. Oh, thank you.
All together.
Yes.
Lead us in, Jeff.
Bless Karla and the mission, prepare her for the work she has to do for the March for Life, and give her the grace and the strength and the wisdom and the knowledge and the piety and the hope and faith and charity that only you can give. In the name of Jesus. Oh, Holy Jesus, fill with the glory, fill with your power, fill with your love. Holy Jesus, Jesus loves you, Karla. Jesus loves you. Have peace, have joy, have hope, and trust. Just trust in the name of the Lord. Jesus, we present her to you in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This means a lot to me. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Okay. And maybe next time in March that I come, if someone needs, like, I am also open to, if you want a dialogue and advice or whatever, I can maybe open that slot of time right after my talk to be here available for whatever you need. I'm sorry that I've been running these days, but it's crazy. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.